Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this plenary session. I'm very honored to be moderating this great panel today. Our topic of discussion is workforce talent strategy, building the public workforce of the future. My name is Oreoluwa Boboye. So I'll give a quick narrative and then we'll go into the questions. It's a challenging time for the public workforce as part of the great resignation that we are going through right now. A record number of people are leaving their jobs. And the public sector is not an exception, unfortunately. The rise of Gen Z and the surge of baby boomer retirement are two more generational drivers that are continuing to destabilize the tech sector. Organizations should consider the issue that hybrid work environment presents in terms of culture, technology, and geography. Organizations are using automation to improve operational efficiency and upskill employees for higher value work. To help state and local governments navigate these challenges in 2022 and lay the foundations for a modern public workforce, governing and government technology are launching a new initiative focused on developing a new talent strategy. However, there's a great need for us to actually explore new rules and best practices for attracting, hiring, onboarding, skilling, and motivating the workforce of the future, and the technologies that help support these goals. So some of the things that we'll talk about this afternoon would include the impact of global demographic and workforce trends on talent development and public workforce. We will also discuss how businesses should structure their talent workforce, planning based on today's evolving era. We will also take a look at external forces and internal factors, fundamentally to redefine the three dimensions of future of work, which is the work itself, the workforce, and the workplace. And finally, we will discuss the global workforce strategies that foster human capital development. At the end of this conversation, we hope to have achieved the following. One, we hope to understand the core element of public workforce talent strategy. We hope to understand the tools for workforce planning. We hope to understand the future roadmap of public workforce. And every one of us know the various ways of building a technology-driven workforce. So it's going to be a very robust conversation this afternoon. And I will start with my first question, and this will be directed to Dr. Ezekiah Falola, who represents the Vice Chancellor of Covenant University. So the future of work asks us to consider the biggest question of our age, right? What influence will the continuing march of technology, automation, artificial intelligence have on where we work and how we work? Therefore, we need to work, or even the need for us to work at all, right? What is our place in an automated world? A lot of questions to be answered. So I would put this question to you. What do you think about the future of work? That's one. There are two questions. And the second one is, will digital technology inevitably mark the end of large companies?
Thank you very much. First and foremost, I want to stand on the already established protocol. The Vice Chancellor is unavoidably absent because of other engagements, and he sent his greetings. Yes, now we are talking about the future of work. I want to start by saying that as of 2022, we have over 3.32 billion workforce around the globe. And out of these 3.32, it is discovered that the Asia and the Pacific region, they have about 59.2% of that, which is above the half of the world population of labor force. And when we look at that, it is also very important for us to also look at some of the generations that we have in the world of work today. And I want to start by saying that everybody should know that probably in the next few years, probably by 2030, the oldest millennials will turn 50 years old in the next 8 years. Then not only that, it is also discovered that over 36,000 people turn 55 years every day. So if I may ask every one of us, they seated here this afternoon, how old are you? And where are you going to be in the next probably 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? Probably most of us that we are seated here probably will have retired or about to retire from the workforce. Then the question now is, even in addition to that, we only have Generation Z making up 26% of the global population. But that's not where I'm going. Where I'm going is this. It is discovered that 693 million plus baby boomers will be retired in the next 10 years. And in addition to that, 40% of millennials making up the workforce between 2022 and 2030. Where am I going? If we have over 693 million plus that will be retiring in the next few years, in addition to probably 40% of the entire workforce around the globe, making up 40%, that will also be probably, that is made up of millennials, then that suggests to us that in the next 10 years, we'll be having over 1.5 billion people that will be retiring from the workforce. So that brings a gap to the level of workforce that we have in the world. And of course, that is the reason why we have more talent hunts, that every organization, they are looking for talent everywhere. Probably that is one of the reasons why we have the jackpot syndrome, that even the developed country too, they are also looking for talent to make up with what they have. Then if you look at that very critically, you discover that we are already having aging population or aging process, particularly in the next 10 years. And if nothing is done, either in public institutions or private organizations, of course, there will not be talent again that probably will be enough for what we intend to achieve by probably in the next 10 years. Then the lead speaker said something when he was making his presentation, and he said that this is the best time for us to begin to look at how we can actually develop our talent and how we have more than enough talent that we are going to deploy to do whatever that we want to do, to make impact, particularly in this digital world. Then I also want to note that even if you look at all of this, it is discovered that we need to begin to train this talent right from probably primary schools. Because if we are saying that in the next few years, we'll be having more people that will be going to retirement, then we need replacement. And even if you look at the public sector very well, you will discover that we have more persons, probably more baby boomers, and possibly Generation Y, who are actually working currently in most of government institutions, parastatals, and even establishments. And even if you look at all of that, you discover that government is not recruiting regularly. And that is to say that before we know it, we might have a serious gap when it comes to labor force, particularly people who are digitally inclined to work and to meet up with the challenge of digital business environment. Then I also want to note that part of what we need to do in this dispensation is actually to depart from the already existing philosophies. We need to depart from knowledge to empowerment, where we empower our people to take up jobs in the digital world. And barrier should not be a barrier. Distance should not be a barrier. We need to develop them. We need to depart from knowledge to empowerment. We also need to depart from forms to skills, because they need to get relevant skills to make them do what we want them to do, particularly in this digital world. Not only that, we need to depart from mathematics to life matters. where we need to have apply applicable knowledge that will help in the dispensation of the digital world. These are some of the things that we need to do. We also need to develop or depart from legalism to realism, because digital world is a reality and we cannot shy away from all of that. So there's need for every organization, either public or public, to begin to look at how we can train probably our students and those who are already working to meet up with the future of work, because it's very, very important to do all of that. So on that note, I want to say that every organization must begin to work out modalities that will help them to impact the already workforce and people who are actually coming on board to do all of that. Now, when the lead speaker was talking, he said that we have more graduates, we produce more graduates virtually every year. But the challenge is this: how many of them are employable? It's not that we don't have people at the labor market that these organizations can employ, but most of the times, the skills, the talent that they're looking for, they are not readily available in the labor market. And that is why every organization should strive to begin to train our existing staff and at the same time, try as much as possible to impart even the coming generation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. As an operator in the matching space, I'm actually very excited by a statement you made that there's going to be a gap in the demand side. So exciting time ahead for matching, because of course when there's demand, there's a need for supply, and then there's a need for matching. And you said something that I picked up as a play on word, which is you are encouraging us to move from a age of mathematics to lifematics. Quite interesting take there. Thank you so much. A round of applause for him again, please. I am going to move to Mr. Adewale Adeyipo. With up to 85% of costs tied up in people, organizations need to predict their strategic and operational requirements and allocate resources accordingly. But the world is changing, and we all know that the digital workforce is here. So here are my questions to you, sir. What approach can possibly be used to incentivize skilled people? That's number one. The second question, what strategies can we deploy towards the public sector for talent retention?
Can you hear me? Okay, first, thank you so much for that question, my good friend. And a good afternoon to you all. Permit me also to stand on the existing protocol. My name is Wale Adeyipo, and I bring greetings from CWG PLC. To your questions, I've been in 3-4 events, probably not even similar events in the last 5 weeks. And the most used word has now suddenly become jackpot. So I'm wondering, is there a process where we could get this thing into the English dictionary for the world to understand what jackpot means? And of course, it could be a general term that could be used in almost every other economy. That said, attracting the right talent, you must first understand what it takes to be skilled workers, like your question said. And I said, not all employees can be considered to be skilled worker. When you can do the differentiation, it's easy for you to understand how do you keep these folks within your organization. I want to believe the assumption is these are folks with exceptional talent, or these are folks that are well plugged into the plan of the organization. I say something often about the driver of every industry and the driver of every organization. Every organization today have certain parameters and variables that govern their growth process. Meaning, what are those variables today that you could say, if you take away those 4 or 5 pillars, then you don't have an organization. You could do that also to an industry. If you understand the drivers of your business, then it's easy. I mean, the immediate drivers and also your growth plan it's easy for you to understand what are those elements that contribute to the drivers of your organization. When you understand this, the next question for me will be, who are the contributors to this? Just like the 80-20 rule, do you clearly understand the major contributor to this driver, the immediate drivers, the pillars of your organization, and of course the growth plan that you have? When you do, then it's difficult for employers, like we see today, to consider motivating this workforce as an incentive, as we popularly use. Motivating this workforce, it's not a favor. And I think that's the mindset that we need to have, especially within the private sector, because they are very instrumental to your now and also to your tomorrow. Having established that, then you get into the real skills of your organization and the business that you're doing. And I've said this also in previous conferences and platforms that I've been, that it's important for organizations to pay real attention to this. I've also argued at different times when they say your employees are the asset of your organization. I say, yes, I agree that all employees are assets, but I always put a note to say the skilled and the talented employees are the valuable asset of your organization. And you agree with me that it's not all assets you go to the bank to keep. There's some assets you necessarily have to keep in your house and you think it's fine. Once you know this asset, it's important for you to keep them committed and you keep them motivated within the organization. There are no general rules of how that could work. So there's no template to say this is precisely what you could do. But there are methodologies that have worked. We have bonuses, we have extended holiday, extended vacation, we have flexible work hours, we have different things, we have having a more robust health plan. What I could say is every industry must look within their own ecosystem. Check also the competing landscape that you have, because that's also a very critical area that you need to check. A lot of people, a lot of employers in this room will agree with me that it's currently not the employer's market. I've had several interviews on different things in my organization in the last 4 weeks, and when I get what these individuals are requesting for, sometimes I almost fall off my seat. And I'm forced to check HR that, are you sure I'm properly rewarded in this organization? And these are folks with 5, 10 years experience. It's clearly not the employer's market. Organizations must focus on keeping the ones they have and keeping them to stay well motivated within the workspace. And lastly, for me also to check, and I think Mr. Bayo spoke extensively into this, you must clearly understand the DNA of the folks that you're speaking to. There's a particular role we're looking for in my organization, and for 8 weeks we couldn't get it. When we later shortlisted to the last 3, maybe out of 30, the last most qualified 2 candidates did not go to school. They probably left in what we call the GSS3. They didn't do the senior secondary school. And we ran the interview again and again, and they came out to be the best. In our organization, we have a policy that you must be a graduate before we can employ you. That decision died that day. Because we must be able to compete. And of course, when we spoke to them and they gave the terms and conditions of how they could stay, it also didn't fit into the culture of the current CWG. So today we have a fintech subsidiary of CWG called Fifth Lab, not because I can't produce my innovative product within CWG, but the culture of these folks did not completely fit into the culture of CWG. So you must also clearly understand the environment. Money sometimes is not a big motivating factor for this individual. We employed one and we asked him when was he going to resume, and he mailed back and said, resume where? And we said, we gave you an offer letter days ago, meaning you have a job. When will you resume? Give us and he said he can resume immediately. I work in Abeokuta. I'm not living in Abeokuta. Of course, we had to withdraw the contract and had to state there that you have flexible working hours. But of course, we have other people that are working at work. So we put something there that some of these things can change over time, just to be sure you are not building an unhealthy environment. My point in all this is the skills are there, the talent are there. It's not the employer's market. Your environment, is it conducive for these folks? Are you creating the right processes, digital-enabled environment for them to be able to stay with you? If you have all this, I think motivating them and keeping them committed to the organization, it's the secondary job. It's not the main job. It's you being enabled enough for them to find you attractive and be able to stay within your organization and do the needful. And I'll leave that comment to when next time I have the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that submission. One thing that did point is the ability to be able to adapt. Just moving out of being very rigid. Thank you so much for the submission. My next question is to Mr. Robert Taiwo, the Managing Director of Philips Consulting. So in today's workplace, successfully competing can only be guaranteed by an intersection between people and technology. Therefore, quality digital tools are not enough. It's important for us to consider mental adoption and readiness of employees for new technology, which is a key factor for success. Therefore, how can a digital transformative plan for talent be implemented? Seems like a very large one. And the follow-up question is, what must be done to optimize the performance of digital talent in Africa?
Great, thank you very much. I thank you so much for giving me the easy questions. So, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Robert Taiwo. I represent Philips Consulting. Philips Consulting are the largest indigenous consulting company, obviously, in Nigeria. This year, we celebrated our 30th year in existence, which is a great achievement for a Nigerian company. Thank you. Personally, for me, I love this event. In a way, it feels like a bit of a homecoming. And the reason why I say that is in 2010, I was one of the individuals that worked on the architecture for the first innovation ecosystem for Lagos State. And it's really interesting 12 years on seeing what we've been able to achieve and kind of where we are. And I'm actually a Lagosian as well. I think everybody needs to be really take particular attention to the conversation that's going to happen over the next couple of days. Because the thing is, in one way or the other, the outcome is going to impact everybody in this room. It's going to impact you if you're an employer of labor. It's going to impact you if you're an employee. It's going to impact you if you're unemployed. And if it doesn't impact you, it's going to impact your kids. So I think everybody needs to kind of have a strategy. It's really interesting. Over the next couple of years, next 2-3 years, two things are going to happen. One thing that's going to happen is 75 million jobs globally are going to be lost. So they're going to disappear. And we're already seeing the impacts of that locally here in Nigeria. 133 million jobs globally are going to be created. They're going to be created. So there are opportunities there. The second thing that's going to happen, which is quite pivotal, is that by 2025, for the first time in human history, computers are going to be doing more work than human beings. So the ratio is going to be something like 52% to 48%. So as you can see, there's a lot of change happening. And I'll be honest with you, my concern is I feel that Africa is slightly behind, but we'll come on to that. So the question I was asked was about talent strategy. I don't think you can actually talk about talent strategy without talking about business strategy. I think the both are intrinsically aligned. And sometimes I say to HR people when they're talking about a talent strategy or talking about job descriptions, I say, well, actually, what you're actually talking about is a business strategy. And I think you kind of need to be clear about that. And let me explain. To create a talent strategy, what an organization needs to do is it needs to think, where am I going to be in 3 to 5 years' time? And then you kind of need to work backwards from that. And in working backwards from that, you say, here's my journey. And at the particular points in time, over the next 3 to 5 years, what kind of technologies am I going to deploy? When I'm clear on the technologies that I'm going to deploy over that 3 to 5 years, I need to think about what are the skills and competencies that I need to drive those technologies. Once I figure out what the skills and competencies I need to drive those technologies are, I put that into a job description, I publish it, and I go into the market, and that's how you hire people. Now, it's quite interesting. Well, 2 things need to happen. One is you hire people, but also it gives you the opportunity to look within the organization and start retraining. In earnest, that way you give people within the organization opportunities as well, and that's absolutely critical. So I sometimes tell people who are looking for jobs, I say to them, when you read a job description, you're not just reading a job description, you'll be shocked at how many people apply to jobs, and they don't even read the job description. So the CV isn't aligned to the job description. But actually, you've got to say to yourself that a job description is a strategic document. So if you're looking for a job, especially in the digital space, my big ask to you is read the job description. The interesting thing, though, is the technical part that I've just described, that's quite easy because it's process-driven. Where I think the real challenge is when it comes to talent strategy is in 2 components. One component is in attracting staff. The second component, and we've talked about it extensively, is retaining staff. So let's talk about attracting staff. So I have a question. Can everybody with a full-time job please raise your hand? Everybody with a full-time job, can you please raise your hand? Okay, full-time job, please raise your hand. Okay, interesting. So we recently conducted an analysis, and what it suggests is that 50% of the people who raise their hands, if the opportunity presents itself, you're going to leave the country in the next 12 months. And Kelvin, I noticed you there, that I was watching you. One of my staff is there, I was watching you. You're planning to leave the country in the next 12 months, fact. We've done the research. The other thing that we found that was really interesting was 88% of the people who are leaving are young people, millennials and Gen Zs. Why are they leaving? 4 reasons. The first reason they're leaving is because of security, and the second reason they're leaving is because of the economy. So that tells you there's work to do. So that means that it doesn't matter how great your organization is. These are external factors, sometimes which are beyond our control as employers. So if we don't fix security, if we don't fix the economy, what we're seeing from the data is that people will leave. Other couple of reasons why they're leaving. One is salary, and that's understandable, and this is a global issue. Leaving because of salary because the cost of living has gone up. So we think about inflation at 23%, think about the price of food, what it was a few years ago, what it is now. We're at that point where it's starting to impact employees. That's just the truth. The other reason why they're leaving is culture. They're leaving because of the culture sometimes that exists within organizations. The term that was coined from our survey is toxic culture within some Nigerian organizations. And what does that mean? Ultimately, there's 4 types of cultures. There's a hierarchical culture, and as you can imagine, that's top-down control, or at the top. We know that, in this environment, you're talking, I'm talking. That kind of environment, that's hierarchical. The second kind of culture that we sometimes see described prevalent in this economy is the family culture. And you can imagine that's kind of natural because there's a lot of family businesses. The interesting thing about the family culture is, they're great places to work, but sometimes there's challenges because, yes, everybody's friends, but we don't really, in those cultures, we don't really challenge each other. So what you find sometimes is those kind of cultures, strategically, they don't keep up. Everybody's friends, but we don't really meet our objectives and we don't make much money, sometimes. The third kind of culture is market-orientated culture. A market-orientated culture is interesting because in a market-orientated culture, what you're doing is everything is built around the products and services and the needs of the customer. But the interesting thing with that is sometimes if you base your culture around the needs of the customer, you might get it wrong. What you should be thinking about is what will the customer want in 3 years' time, in 5 years' time. That's the challenge with a market-oriented culture. The culture that we're seeing that digital talent loves and they gravitate towards is called an adhocracy. And an adhocracy is where it's an open, innovative culture. It's a safe place for talent to work. Ideas can come from anywhere. People can speak freely to their bosses. Ideas flow by, multi-directionally from the top down, bottom up. And it's a safe space for people to work and share ideas. Those are adhocratic cultures, and that's where individuals, in the digital space prefer to work. So what am I saying? I'm saying on the first question, when it comes to talent strategy, it's not as simple as just process. That's one part. You also need to consider culture. It's a big deal. And the second thing that we really need to consider is, the whole point about it's not just about getting staff in, but you also have to have mechanisms in place where you can retain that staff as well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And to the second question, and I think the second question I'll be a lot shorter. So the second question was about optimizing talent in Africa. I think that's an interesting one. For me, I'm not worried about talent. I've heard a lot of debate about talent and the challenges around training, et cetera, et cetera. I feel that if we get the vision right, talent will emerge organically or deliberately. But I don't think we have a cohesive story in Africa just yet. What do we want to be famous for in Africa when it comes to technology space? What do we want to be famous for at our country level in Nigeria? What do we want to be famous for at a state level? And I think it's very important, because I think once you can come out with a compelling vision and a compelling strategy, people will buy into it. Ecosystems will buy into it. Investors will buy into it. And talent will emerge like a phoenix. So I feel that that's one thing we're missing. I feel that the question of digital, what we should be asking ourselves, is how can we use digital to alleviate poverty? And how can, we've talked recently and we said there's 133 million people in poverty in Nigeria. The question we should be asking ourselves is how can we use digital as a mechanism so it can alleviate people out of poverty? Now, what's really interesting, 22 years ago, this was the strategy of the British government. And I was fortunate at the time I was part of that conversation. What do I mean? So the Prime Minister at the time, Tony Blair, what he said was, he foresaw into the future and he gave a speech saying the E-generation is with us. This was 22 years ago. And what he talked about was, he didn't want digital to create a divide between the rich and the poor. He knew there was coming a time that if the people en masse didn't have digital and technology skills, some people would be left behind. And he knew that would create a problem. So what did he do? He set about reducing the cost of broadband at the time. He pushed broadband into rural areas. He created courses, and they pushed those courses free into the economy for the people who were underprivileged. He made sure that over 100,000 schools and learning centers had access to free technology and free learning. And over time, he digitized government. And what he did, which was really interesting, he shifted all of the services that government provides to the citizens, he shifted them online. And at the time, he was heavily criticized because people were saying, well, how can people connect with these services? How can I apply for a driver's license? How can I apply for a passport? But what he was doing inadvertently, he was challenging people to train and challenging people to engage with technology. And what that has meant, that if you look at the rankings, the e-government rankings, the UK is high up. If you look at the e-government rankings in Africa, Nigeria currently is at 140. Ghana is at 106. There are only 4 countries that are beating the global average. So what does that mean? It means in the e-government space as well, there's a lot of work to do. So just in conclusion, big vision and talent takes care of itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. What do we want to be famous for in Africa? Tell the story, investors will buy in. Great word. My next question is to Mr. Idris Bugaje. And it's straight. How is the MBT ensuring that young people are digitally prepared for the future of work in public sectors?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I am Dr. Koko. I represent the Executive Secretary of the National Board for Technical Education, Kaduna, Professor Idris Mohammed Bugaje. Distinguished discussants, participants, good afternoon, please. Yes, as you may be aware, the National Board for Technical Education is a sole regulatory and supervisory body for technical and vocational education falling outside the university. So it means it is a regulatory body for polytechnics, monotechnics, and specialized institutions, as well as technical colleges. The first panel that precedes ours and what we are discussing currently make two important positions. Covenant, CWG, Philips Consulting, and as Madam Honorable Commissioner put it earlier with her first panel which she participated, you know, they agreed on one or two things rather. First, yes, we have to establish that there is a skill gap. For us to agree that there is a skill gap, let me speak in the angle of the regulatory agency which I represent. Two important issues are peculiar to Lagos and Kano. Now that we are talking about Lagos, so let's talk about Lagos. The population of Lagos is 10% of national standing. So whichever figure you see, whether they say Lagos is 15 million or Lagos is 25 million, let's take Lagos to be a total 10% population of Nigeria. And in recent assessment, Nigerian population is put as over 200 million. So if we take 210, 225, then Lagos is what? When we take 10%. So it means there is market as far as industrial and technological activities are concerned. Now, if the 10% of population represent that larger market of nearly 25 million people, so it means industrial activities are what? Are high. Now, if industrial, commercial, and technological activities are high, then check also what is the GDP of Lagos. Also, if you are charging the GDP of Lagos representing 10% of national population, you should also take 30% of the total national GDP and put it and give it to Lagos. Then if we have $445 billion GDP standing as a national economy, then that of Lagos will be what? Around $133 billion. Although Lagos state government is projecting $100 billion. But by current standing, we have $133 billion Lagos state economy. That also confirms that is what? That is industry and technological activities which require jobs. Job and money, you know. Yes, so the other component which we need to understand, which will also confirm there is a skill gap, is to now see what is the standing of Lagos State in providing the skill requirement for the market, for the industries, for the technology that is required to power the Lagos economy. This means Lagos State has last for tech, but they have taken it away from us. I hope you know. Madam Commissioners are here, Madam Commissioner and the Honorable Commissioner for Science and Technology know. We lost last for tech due to the conversion made by the Lagos State government. We respect that decision. It is a decision of Lagos State government. Fine. So it means, do we have a polytechnic in Lagos? We don't have. Also, Lagos State government owns 6 technical colleges. 6. The technical colleges, as they are, they produces the kind and type of manpower we call artisan and craftsman. The polytechnic, the monotechnic, such as the College of Health Technology, the College of Nursing, and it is also important to inform this gathering that the nursing certificate in Nigeria is no longer rated certificate of nursing. Why? Because it neither fall equivalent of a national diploma, nor equivalent of national certificate. That is why the Nursing Council, Nursing and Midwifery Council, has gone back to a drawing board and agreed to award national diploma and higher national diploma in nursing. And I also hope this gathering is aware that nursing graduates from Nigerian schools of nursing, now we converted them to colleges of nursing, are also a sought after skill commodity in the world. That you should know. So now they are going also to be awarded national diploma and higher national diploma upon graduation. So here, what are we saying? It means still, we need to understand the manpower gap in the context of what I presented as Lagos State. So generally, a graduate of university is regarded as a professional manpower. That's what it is. So it means we have craftsmen, artisan, technician, and technologies coming from MBTE certification. Either a polytechnic, a monotechnic, a technical college, or a specialized institution. Still here, let's take an engineer now for the purposes of analysis. If a university produces one engineer, that engineer is expected to work with 4 technologies who are HND holders. In turn, with 8 technicians who are ND holders. In turn, with 16 artisan or craftsmen. So we have LASU. Then now, of recent, we have LASU Tech. I think that's what they call the LASU Tech. It's a Lagos State University of Science and Technology. So now check the quantum of graduation as of before the conversion of LASU Tech, what LASU gives to Lagos. Take away Unilag, please. It's not owned by Lagos State. So let's do our calculation with what Lagos State government own and what is as a proprietor and the promoter of education that is turning out manpower which we are assessing now. So it means 1 engineer to 4 technologies to 8 technicians to 16 craftsmen and artisans. Where do you place the quantum of the gap we are discussing? It means, yes, the gap exists. That is a confirmation of the position of the 2 panelists now. The second position also means we agree we need to do something about the curriculum. Yes, we need to do. It means also the curriculum currently being operated is not matching the needs of the job market. There is a reason always for that. Philip Consulting, Joverman, you will know that certain situation when you are assigned a recruitment exercise, the job applicants that come are always all the time not matching the job itself. That's why you talk about the job description. Here, the curriculum are what? Are largely at variance with what the jobs require. The reason is this. I'm happy my very senior colleague, Professor Ogundufe, knows until when Professor Peter Okebukola became NUC Executive Secretary, Nigerian university system has never been subjected to quality assurance. Let's talk. We are Nigerians. It was during the time of Peter Okebukola accreditation started in Nigerian universities. And it was at that time they established what we call BMAS, that is Basic Minimum Academic Standards. This week now, 2022, the same NUC roll out what they call Core Curriculum and Minimum Academic Standards. So it moved from BMAS to CCMAS now. So here, you cannot give a curriculum and sit down. I was in Lagos sometimes here. I met a professor, very funny, when we are talking about curriculum and the stakeholders in developing a curriculum. The guy was telling me he single-handedly rolled out the curriculum offered in his department. What did he know Philip Consultant needs if they want to employ an accountant, if they want to employ a management scientist, you know? What did he know now the Ministry of Education or Science and Technology require of a research officer? He didn't know. He only feel what he want to give that class. And he told them that at the end of the day, what happened? They come out and they don't match the job. So in a curriculum situation, Madam Commissioner, I'm happy you are seated here, and also your counterpart in the science and technology. In developing a curriculum, you must take account of the stakeholders. This the MBT has done at all the time. First, who are the employers of labor? You need them. They are the ones to tell you what you want from your schools. And then you produce the graduate to match their requirements. Then the practitioners who are professional bodies. You need them in the development of the curricula. Why? Because they are the ones to accept or accommodate these students after graduation. So the professional practice or licensing, which may be required, that's what now the professional bodies will tell. Three, now you require the university, in the case of polytechnics, why these children will now progress in their career. Either they want to go to university or they remain as technicians or technologists on the job. Now, the other component we need to understand is that the board is doing a lot in reviewing and developing curricula. Here, what we need to do as Lagos State government is to look at the emerging areas of your needs as an economy. What are these emerging areas? Is it in the ICT, mechatronics, autotronics? Because largely now, if you take Laspotech and converted it to a university, you need to understand that it has to be called a specialized university. What made it specialized? That means students going to Laspotech do have to have a special skill. Maybe they should be only ND holders. And then when you graduate as a degree holder from Laspotech, rather, he will not be the same like the conventional LASU. Because, so please try to understand this. I think there will be another opportunity to say something more. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're out of time, but we can't end this session without giving Honorable Commissioner. Yes, we can. So I realized that you wanted to respond, or should I go straight to the question? All right, ma'am. Okay, so I'll go straight to your question, ma'am, and that is, how can education and training providers place a stronger focus on providing skills and development opportunities that are relevant to the needs of learners, society, and the economy? Very quickly. Thank you, ma'am.
Well, thank you very much. In answering, I'll also address some of the issues raised by
thank you.
The gentleman from NAPTEP. Yes, you know, I said it in the earlier session that unfortunately our curriculum has maintained a rigid position somewhere with a lot of focus on content, on knowledge, and so on, but very little focus on skills. And so, as a state, and since we're talking about Lagos State now, I would like to just give an idea about what we've tried to do with the curriculum. We do have to present our students on the Nigerian curriculum. The rigidity of the curriculum comes out when they have to do the WAEC exam, where the methodology of assessment is such that it drives them to what we call the lower order skills and not the higher order skills. It's getting better, but there is a tendency to drive them to the lower order skills, and therefore that is why that curriculum is so knowledge intensive. For instance, if I can just give an example, the Nigerian curriculum, the WAEC will say, this is the eye, draw the eye, label the eye. If you go to some other more engaging systems, they will say, these are 4 eyes. What's wrong with them? There's no way you cannot answer that question unless you know the parts of the eye. So you don't need to draw and be labeling one by one, because what that does, it encourages rote learning, cramming, and pouring. And so we always have to remember that we have that assessment exam. And that is why we opted to go in Lagos State and say, look, here we are going to have various levels. In our secondary schools, there is an extremely high attrition rate because WAEC, NECO, and CO assume people are going to go to university. They are not. If you look at JAM, maybe 2 million people are sitting for JAM. The universities have a total carrying capacity of under 1 million, maybe 700,000. So you are going to break the hearts of 1.3 million people. And next year, the number is going to rise because the 1.3 will sit again together with those just coming out of school. So the number continues to rise. So let's be realistic and just accept that many of our students are really not going to go to university. And that's why I was very excited when I learned about the workplace and how someone who didn't go to university actually was found to be the most desirable employee. So that's why we decided, look, let's go for a qualification that students can have where they will work, they'll get work. Let's stop doing, and when they graduate, let's stop graduating people, hundreds of people who did BA philosophy. I have many with many CVs, can't get jobs for them, you know. But let's look at what the environment wants. And that's why in developing our comprehensive school curriculum, we actually worked with the private sector. The chairman of the committees from the private sector. More than 3/4 of the members are from the private sector. So they drew up as what does the private sector need? We had to do our research. NESG has done some research, other organizations have done some research, and so on, about the jobs that are most essential in the workplace of today and in the workplace of tomorrow. And that's when we drew up the various disciplines. We are doing agric, yes, because this is Lagos, we don't have land, but we can do urban farming. We are doing fashion. This is Lagos. Look at the ladies here, very fashionable. We are doing photography. Look around. Young people are always, snapping themselves. We are doing ICT. And that, for us, is so critical that every school must do ICT. And it's not ICT as in go and learn Word, PowerPoint, and so on. It's ICT as in artificial intelligence, as in robotics, as in coding. I've gone around. I've gone to visit a STEM school somewhere outside Nigeria to say, how do you teach coding to 3-year-olds? Because I actually went through the school and every level, a STEM school, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and they've told us what to do. So we've done a lot of work with the private sector. They've given us their curriculum, they've trained our teachers, some have even built labs and so on for us. In fact, I forgot construction. Lagos is a huge construction zone. So we are going to have to train people who are going to work in that sector. So I think we all have to, the main thing is, like he said, like the gentleman from NAPTEP said, work with the community. What do you want? Do you want BA philosophy, or you want somebody who is going to be able to develop codes for the workplace? Which one do you want? It's good if a person knows about philosophy to some extent, but that is not going to put food on the table. Yeah. And it's one of the major reasons why our students are japping, because there is no hope here, because all we are churning out are people who just cannot work effectively in the workplace. And we have 5 colleges of technical training. We cannot wait. We don't have the luxury of time to wait for these schools, which are very big, expensive schools, requiring expensive methods of they are very expensive to maintain. Total capacity in those schools is 10,000. We have 100,000 children in GS3. So only 1% of them, because they take 2,000 per year, can go to those schools. We have to make sure that we have outlets where they can go to. Not everybody is going to go to university. Don't deceive yourself. Even those who pass and have 8 A1s, they can't afford it anyway. They don't go to university either. So why don't you give them skills? You know they can work. They can still go to university if they want. But by then they'll be earning their own income, be self-employed, and be able to cope in the workplace. No, I know time has passed, but I think it's only fair to allow me to have my say. Thank you. So I think... Thank you very much. So I think we all have to be realistic about our environment. Our environment in Lagos is such that we have we have 1 million children in our public schools. With 1 million children, we have to really be strategic about what they are going to be able to do when they leave our schools. And so that's why we've had to rethink, reimagine, and actually reconstruct part of the educational system that we are offering in the state. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, a warm appreciation for every member of the panel today. Thank you so much for contributing, and we really had a good time. Did we? We had a good time, right? Thank you. Please appreciate my panel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Please do stand for a quick photo op. And thank you very much, Honorable Commissioner, for the last comments. The reference to the moderator was not for you to round up, man. It was for him to moderate. Please, once again, a round of applause to them. Media, press. Is there a microphone?
Yes, there's one.
Do you need more time?
Pardon?
Do you need more time to talk?
I can talk to you tomorrow.
Call the commissioner, the SA, the
PS to join on the group photo.
Okay, please, can we have the Commissioner, the SA, and the PS, yes, to please join this photo up. Thank you very much. So I'm sure the news you've all been waiting for is that of lunch. Lunch will be served during the breakout sessions. 2 will hold here and 2 will hold in the other room. Please do ensure that you